Millionaire exposed. Discover the shocking secret in baby's soup that changed everything forever. Clara's kitchen was a symphony of sounds. The whir of her blender, the bubbling of pots, and the delighted giggles of her son Jake as he splashed baby food across the counter. She had certainly turned chaos into comfort, but every day was an uphill battle against a tide of financial worry. As she mixed peas and sweet potatoes, a familiar tension crept back into her chest. Was this enough? The ding of her phone snapped her thoughts back to the present. Tom Hartman. The name sent a shiver of excitement and dread through her. The charismatic millionaire and culinary mogul had found her, a mere chef brewing dreams in a diner. "Clara, this is your moment." His voice oozed charm over the phone. He offered her a chance to take her baby food creations national. For a heartbeat, visions of a brighter future for her and Jake blazed in her mind. A chance for stability, the freedom to create what she loved without the crushing weight of debt hanging overhead. But then came the doubts, gnawing at her like hungry mice. A whirlwind of emotion surged through her. Elation, fear, and a sinking sense of guilt that wrapped around her heart. What if he only wanted her talent to line his pockets? The very thought made her stomach twist. The local farmers, their fresh produce fueling her recipes, were already struggling. Would her name become a pawn in a greedy game over their livelihoods? Standing in her kitchen, it felt like everything was spiraling. She envisioned the farmers, faces lined with worry, their hands hardened from years of labor. She recalled their smiles and generous generosity, gifting her the finest ingredients. Could she abandon them for a chance at success? Her mind raced with the moral implications, her heart camping out in the gray area between ambition and loyalty. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Clara's pulse quickened, not just from Tom's offer, but because she was teetering on the edge of a choice that could change everything. Would she stand up as a voice for her community and sacrifice her dreams? Or would she cling to opportunity, letting the weight of success overshadow her roots? The memories filled her mind. Afternoons in the diner, Jake's laughter peppered through the scents of onion and garlic. And in that moment, Clara was nauseated by the tension between worlds. The comfort of what she had, and the allure of what she craved. As the day of the expo loomed closer, Clara felt a growing unease reverberate through her, weaving intricate knots in her stomach. Tom was there, waiting with his poised smile and sleek, tailored suits. She envisioned confronting him, courage swelling in her chest, yet an undertow of self-doubt threatened to drag her under. She hesitated, recalling Jake's wide eyes filled with pride. Would she inspire him, or teach him that ambition comes at a cost? The thought tightened the space around her heart. Now, standing before the vibrant banners of Tom's empire, Clara felt ready to confront the looming shadows of her dilemma. But as the spotlight kissed her skin, she questioned it all one last time. Would revealing the truth protect her family's honor, or destroy the very dreams she fought for? The spotlight warmed her skin, but it was nothing compared to the heat boiling inside her chest. Clara's heart raced violently as she prepared to speak. She scanned the crowd, faces turned in anticipation, hungry for the next big reveal. Yet behind those eager eyes was a stark reminder of her roots, the farmers whose livelihoods depended on her honesty. Inhaling deeply, Clara stepped to the microphone, feeling the rough wood beneath her fingertips. The perfect moment to voice her concerns was slipping through her fingers like grains of sand. Would anyone understand? Would anyone care if she chose the truth over the enticing, hollow promise of success? As the noise of the expo faded into a dull murmur, it felt like she was standing between two worlds, one hot with ambition and the other cold with loyalty. "Good afternoon, everyone," she started, her voice surprisingly steady despite the tumult within. She forced herself to look up, meeting Tom's assertive gaze amidst the crowd. He nodded, an all-too confident smile plastered on his face, as if he already knew how this would end. Yet Clara was no longer certain of her path. Would she follow through with her carefully constructed plan, where the truth twinkled at the edges, or improvise in real time, confronting the reality of what lying beneath her ambition truly meant? "Today, I'm excited to share my baby food creations with you," she continued, pretending at ease, her mind racing far beyond the words. "But more importantly, I want to acknowledge the local farmers who provide the spirit behind my recipes, the essential love and dedication that goes into making real food." A ripple of surprise washed over the audience. Tom shifted slightly, a frown forming on his lips. Clara took this as a cue to dig deeper. "Each ingredient represents a story, a family's heritage. They rely on the community for their survival, just as I rely on their produce to feed my son." Anxiety danced in her stomach, yet there was also budding strength she hadn't anticipated. As Clara spoke, she began to see the bigger picture. This was no longer solely about her dreams or her success. It became about balance, the harmony between her aspirations and the responsibility that overshadowed them. A train of thought emerged. Could she carve a niche within Tom's empire yet stay true to her core values? "I want to create a platform not only for my creations, but for those who nurture the very foundations of our meals," she continued, her excitement shifting from fear to a palpable hope. "Together, we can ensure farmers thrive, creating jobs and feeding families authentically." As she wrapped up her presentation, Clara's heart surged with a new determination. Tom was no longer the sole architect of her path. She could be a co-designer, introducing ethical practices alongside entrepreneurial spirit. There lay a way forward where ambition and community could interlace, growing together rather than at odds. Clara took a deep breath as applause filled the room, drowning out her doubts. Tom's expression twisted uncomfortably. Perhaps this wasn't the presentation he had envisioned. But as she walked off the stage, Clara felt emboldened by her own words. She was redefining her identity, not just as a chef, but as an advocate for a deeper cause. Yet as she mingled through the crowd, several voices approached, questions whipping through the air about her collaboration with Tom. The uncertainty in their eyes echoed her earlier fears, suggesting that the journey would be filled with scrutiny and judgment. Could she truly navigate this new landscape while maintaining her integrity? These lingering thoughts tightened Clara's chest as her gaze fell back to Jake, watching her from the sidelines with his innocent smile. She knew then that whatever decision came next would not just affect her career, but the very lessons she aimed to impart to him. With the weight of expectation settling on her shoulders, Clara felt a new challenge brewing on the horizon. Would she take the plunge into unknown territory, fighting for her vision alongside Tom? Or would she stand her ground against possible betrayals? The urgency pressed against her like a coiled spring, ready to unravel. And now, with both ambition and loyalty entwined, she pondered the next move, one that might forever alter her path. The moment had arrived, and there was no turning back. Clara's heart thudded heavily in her chest as she stepped off the stage, her mind still racing from the adrenaline. The applause blared in her ears, but all she could focus on was the uncertainty simmering beneath the surface of her ambitious declaration. As she nodded to a few acquaintances, the weight of her decision started to settle. Disappointment flashed across Tom's features as he approached her, and she braced herself for the conversation she knew was coming. She had struck a nerve, challenging the very foundation of their potential partnership with just a few words. "You really went off script there," he remarked, his tone casual, yet she could sense the reprimand lurking beneath the surface. "I had to. It's the truth, Tom," Clara replied, her voice steady yet softening under his critical gaze. "People deserve to know where their food comes from, They deserve to know the stories behind these ingredients. Fair enough. But do you think they care? He retorted, folding his arms. At the end of the day, it's about sales. You can't build a brand on idealism alone. Those words struck deep, igniting a flicker of doubt in her mind. Was she being naive? With every ounce of her being, Clara yearned to challenge the corporate landscape, to bring authenticity back into the food she crafted. Yet, could she do it effectively while navigating Tom's world? I'm not suggesting abandoning our goal, she asserted, gathering her thoughts. I want to integrate ethical practices into our business model. That's the foundation of our success. Clara felt the tension slowly recede as confidence surged within her. If we build this on connection and integrity, it won't just be us profiting. We'll uplift the community. Tom raised an eyebrow. That's a lofty plan, Clara. And ambitious, sure. But ambition needs fuel, real fuel. You need to make a profit before anything else. As he spoke, a spark ignited in Clara's mind, blending frustration with resolve. Then let's make our profit different. Let's focus on quality and transparency instead of just bottom lines. We can redefine what success looks like. Tom shifted uneasily, unconvinced, his posture rigid, but Clara could see his defenses faltering. Think about it, Tom. Consumers are evolving. They crave transparency. If we can position ourselves as part of that shift, we'll not only attract customers but also inspire a movement. A flicker of interest sparked behind his eyes, and for a moment, Clara felt real momentum. She pondered whether she could lead Tom while instilling her ideals. However, a nagging question lingered. Was she capable of ensuring that ambition didn't corrupt her? If she leaned too far into Tom's worldview, would she risk losing her voice and those she vowed to support? As several audience members sidled over, eager for more conversation, Clara felt a sudden swell of confidence. She realized she held the reins of her narrative. Each interaction was a chance to plant seeds of awareness, create deeper connections, and advocate for genuine transparency, something she could tangibly influence. Let's organize farm tasting events where customers can meet the farmers. Let's celebrate our growers during our launches, she suggested. The ideas flowed from her like a fountain, newfound excitement infused in her voice. There's so much potential here. Yet beneath the surface, Clara knew such strategies would cultivate scrutiny and skepticism. Not everyone would be ready to welcome this shift. Her heart raced with the possibility of growing against the odds. With each new possibility, she felt a flicker of doubt creep into her thoughts again, whispering shadows of failure and betrayal. Could she sustain this newfound vigor without losing herself? As the conversations began to swell around her, Clara felt invigorated yet hesitant. Would she champion this cause alone? In fighting for a path where ambition aligned with integrity, was she risking more than just her career? Determined to find out, Clara resolved to face whatever trials lay ahead. A plan began to form in her mind, edges of trepidation tempered by commitment. Could this trajectory lead her to redefine success in more profound ways, both personally and professionally? Before she could pursue that thought further, Tom interrupted her reflection. You're serious about this, aren't you? The sincerity in his voice pierced through the noise. Clara nodded, feeling the gravity of her endeavor settling firmly upon her shoulders. The challenge lay beyond mere ambition. She needed to navigate this treacherous territory without losing her values. But what would be the price of standing tall for a cause that might isolate her in a realm that thrived on superficiality? The moment of clarity was electrifying, propelling her into uncharted territory and solidifying her resolve. This was no longer merely about baby food. This was an invitation for transformation. As new voices emerged from the crowd, Clara's pulse quickened with mixed anticipation and dread. One question lingered ominously. Could she hold firm against the overwhelming tide of expectation, and in doing so, become something more than just a player in Tom's game? All at once, she recognized it. The moment where her integrity became her greatest weapon. And with this realization, she stepped deeper into the realm of vulnerability, confronting the true essence of her journey. The stakes had been raised, and the truth beckoned her forward, into the unknown. What would she expose next, and at what cost? Clara took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment cascade over her. She had stepped into a new realm, one where ideals clashed with practicality, where every decision would scrutinize not just her resolve, but her entire vision for the future. The aftermath of her speech felt heavy, almost suffocating, yet it lit a fire inside her that she had never known existed. "Clara!" a voice called out. She turned to meet the enthusiastic gaze of a loyal friend and mentor, Lena, who had been watching from the sidelines. "That was incredible. You really made an impact up there." Clara felt a flicker of warmth. Lena had always been a source of unwavering support, reflecting the kind of authenticity she yearned to cultivate in her own business. I want to do more than create a product," Clara confessed, her voice low but earnest. "I want to build a connection that matters." Lena nodded, her expression shifting to one of solemn acknowledgement. "That's a bold ambition, but you'll need a solid plan to make it stick. Have you thought about your next steps? What about Tom?" Clara hesitated. The uncertainty in Tom's eyes hadn't gone unnoticed. While he was pragmatic, she sensed that he could become an ally or an obstacle, depending on how the next discussions unfolded. "I believe we can find common ground, but it requires trust. I need to prove that my vision can be lucrative. Or he could leverage your passion against you," Lena warned gently. "People don't change overnight, and corporate culture is deeply rooted. Be careful." Clara considered this. The tension between aspiration and caution buzzed around her, stinging like the cool air on her skin. With a mind swirling with ideas, she decided it was time to take the reins of her own narrative, ensuring it wouldn't be dictated by anyone else. As the evening wore on, Clara began to strategize. She wrangled influence in the room, chatting with local farmers, market owners, and stakeholders, pitching her vision in each conversation. What if we partnered together? Imagine consumers knowing the stories behind each product, savoring rich flavors while understanding the journey it took to get to their table. The response varied, but enthusiasm glinted in the eyes of those who had been longing for a shift in the industry. Their excitement breathed life into her proposals, fueling a momentum she hadn't dared to expect. Each nod of agreement felt like a building block, reinforcing her faith in her mission. Yet her encounters were not without resistance. One vendor, George, an old player in the game, threw cold water on her enthusiasm. "Clara, have you looked at your numbers? Your ideas sound great in theory, but can you afford to lose profit margins for all this idealism?" His doubt jabbed at her. She felt the familiar flicker of insecurity begin to swirl in her gut. Would she gamble everything, risking financial stability for integrity? But within that uncertainty, resolve crystallized. What if we could tap into a customer base that values ethics just as much as they do quality? We start small, George. A dedicated product line. Experimental but robust. "I'm not sold," he replied bluntly, crossing his arms. Silence stretched between them, suffocating and heavy with challenge. Clara felt her heart race, the intensity of her convictions swirling around like embers. "I get it. But maybe what's missing is faith. Faith that the industry can evolve if we allow it to flourish through transparency." She could see his skepticism, but also a faint ember of curiosity. As the discussion continued, she realized these moments of confrontation sharpened her focus, revealing her strengths in tactics and negotiation she hadn't previously recognized. Stepping away from the chat, Clara wandered to the edge of the venue, looking out at the stars. The night felt expansive, a mirror to the uncharted path lying ahead. What other discoveries awaited her? Would she unearth hidden allies willing to stir the pot alongside her? Just then, Tom appeared at her side, his expression unreadable. "You've stirred up quite the conversation, haven't you?" "Just planting seeds," Clara said. a skin of confidence encasing her doubts. Seeds need cultivation and protection. You know it won't be easy. A surge of defiance coursed through her veins. I'm ready for it. I have to be. Tom observed her for a moment. A quiet challenge passed between them, veiled in the darkness around them. Then let's talk about those next steps. But prepare yourself. The corporate side won't back down without a fight. As Clara held his gaze, the tension between her ambitions and his pragmatism turned palpable. She realized the battle she was entering wasn't just against the established powers. This was a struggle for her own voice, and its resonance would determine everything. Let's not wait too long, she replied resolutely, half excited, half nervous about the path they would chart ahead. Clara felt her heart race. This was just the start, and already she knew the stakes were climbing higher with every decision. But she found herself wondering, as she prepared for the conversation with Tom, what specific compromises would she be willing to make in the fight for her vision? Would the bridge between aspiration and pragmatism widen until she could no longer cross it? Clara sat across from Tom in the small conference room, the air thick with anticipation. A whiteboard stood against one wall, covered in her hastily scribbled ideas and diagrams. Words like connection, ethics, and transparency stood out starkly against the cluttered surface. She had spent the previous night refining her approach, her thoughts oscillating between idealism and the gritty reality of corporate life. All right, let's dig in, Tom began, folding his hands. You're passionate, and that's commendable, but I need to understand how you envision this working financially. Clara's heart raced at the sound of his pragmatic tone. This was the moment she had been both eager for and dreading. I want to start with an ethical product line that tells a story, she explained, the words flowing from her as she gestured animatedly. It's about more than just selling food. It's about selling the journey of the ingredients and the people behind them. But what about margins? Tom interjected, frowning slightly. In your pitch to George, you suggested a dedicated product line. What's the financial forecast here? Can you really afford to go against the grain? She took a breath, the sharpness of his questioning forcing her to steel herself. This isn't about cutting corners. It's about building brand loyalty in a market that increasingly values ethical practices. The customers I'm targeting will pay a premium to know their product's story. She watched as Tom's expression shifted slightly, a flicker of interest shining through the skepticism. And if that doesn't pan out? He asked, leaning back in his chair, arms crossed. The challenge felt bracing. I'll prove it does, she stated firmly, her determination enhancing her words. If consumers see the value in what we're doing, they will choose our brand over cheaper alternatives. We have to position ourselves as leaders in transparency and sustainability. It's not just about profit, it's about establishing a new norm. Tom raised an eyebrow, intrigued. So, how do you plan to market this? You mentioned partnerships. What does that look like on paper? She felt a swell of confidence as she pulled out a notepad. Names of potential collaborators flowed into her mind. We could start with local farmers who share our values, create a platform where they can tell their stories alongside our products. Each package could have a QR code linking to videos or testimonials. Customers will not only buy our product, they'll buy into our mission. His gaze sharpened, and she sensed a crack in his armor of restraint. That's a creative approach. But if we're bringing on new partners, we need to build a clear business model. What about scalability? Clara leaned forward, reveling in the challenge. I envision launching in phases, starting with limited batches to gauge consumer response, assessing what works and what doesn't, adjusting based on feedback until we find the right balance between profit and purpose. Fine, but phase 1 can't just be pretty slogans and ethically sourced ingredients, he warned, scrutinizing her. What if the sales underperform? What's your backup plan? Clara's pulse quickened, an uneasy knot settling in her stomach. Then we reassess and adapt. Resilience is key. If our initial offering doesn't resonate, we pivot. We evolve. Suddenly, doubt crept in, as she weighed the ramifications. Could she truly navigate the murky waters of corporate pushback and become the champion of a worthy cause? Before she could spiral further into uncertainty, Tom shifted again, visibly contemplating her fervor, catching her eye. "All right. I'm intrigued, but I need you to take this seriously. If we're going to do this, I'll need your full commitment." "I'm all in," she replied with a conviction she hoped would mask her underlying fears. "This is more than a project for me. It's a mission. If we succeed, it changes everything." "The first step," Tom laid out, "is a focused presentation to the board. We need data, projections, something concrete to back up your vision." As she absorbed his words, Clara felt the tendrils of anxiety wrap around her heart again. Would she be able to pull together a compelling case that could stand up to the scrutiny of potential detractors? "Consider it a challenge," Tom added, a spark of authority returning to his voice. "Prepare your proposal, and we'll see if it can ignite the board's interest." Clara nodded, a mix of excitement and dread brewing within her. She had a chance to shift the narrative, but the stakes were higher than ever. As she walked out of the meeting, the weight of possibility lay heavy on her shoulders. She had a vision, but now she needed to materialize it. How would she handle the demands of practicality without stifling her ideals? It was a delicate balance, but as she stared at the empty conference room, a thought pounded in her mind with clarity. If she failed to find that equilibrium, would she lose herself in the sea of compromise and corporate expectations? The journey ahead promised to test her resolve in ways she had yet to fathom, and deep down, Clara could feel the intensity of what was to come. Would she emerge as the visionary leader she aspired to be, or would the very system she sought to improve pull her under? Clara sat at her cluttered desk that evening, surrounded by stacks of research papers and the glow of her laptop screen. The world outside was cloaked in darkness, yet her thoughts raced with the potential of her idea. Highlighters littered her workspace like unmade decisions, each color representing a different facet of her proposal, yet one fear overshadowed everything. What if her passionate vision crumbled under the weight of scrutiny? She needed concrete data, a roadmap that would answer every question Tom had laid before her. She pulled up trend reports on consumer preferences, diving deep into the statistics that illustrated a growing shift toward ethical consumption. With each number, Clara felt a flicker of hope. There was a movement rising, one that her aspirations could ride. Yet the shadows of doubt loomed heavy. The data alone wouldn't be enough. She needed a narrative, a thread that connected her customers not only to products, but to values. This wasn't just about numbers. It was about real lives impacted by the choices made at the intersection of food and ethics. How could she convey that? Clara found herself scribbling ideas on a fresh sheet of paper. A compelling framework came to life, guided by her desire to manifest a deeper purpose into the corporate machinery. Yet, internally, a voice nagged with fear. What if it was naive? What if the board members didn't see the same merit in her mission, becoming yet another hurdle rather than an ally? She was standing at a precipice, and the plunge into the unknown filled her stomach with a mix of dread and exhilaration. Days turned into nights as Clara crafted her presentation. Sleep became a luxury, the only interruptions coming from her own relentless internal dialogue, questioning her ability to stand firm against seasoned corporate warriors. The moment she admitted her own self-doubt, a resolve formed. She had to confront it. What lay ahead, if successful, could reshape her career forever. On the appointed day, Clara slipped into her professional attire, a tactile armor against her uncertainties. As she walked through the polished hallways toward the boardroom, her heart raced, matching the rhythm of her footsteps. Each corridor felt like a tunnel leading her further into the lion's den. The stakes were high. Failure would not only jeopardize her project, but also her emerging identity as a leader. Tom, seated at the head of the table, welcomed her with an encouraging nod. Her thoughts threatened to sway her, but she centered herself, focusing on her mission. She started her presentation with the story of a farmer whose organic practices not only saved the soil, but also nurtured communities. The visual of his muddy hands contrasted starkly with the sterile corporate environment they sat in, a jarring reminder that those hands were part of the heart of what she was trying to build. As Clara spoke, she wove together numbers and narratives, igniting a spark in her audience. They leaned forward, engaged. She shared testimonials of consumers who had chosen ethical products over cheaper alternatives because it resonated with their values. She felt a rush. This was the connection she had yearned to establish. But just as the tide seemed to shift in her favor, Sam, another board member known for his harsh critiques, interjected. "All of this sounds very idealistic, Clara, but counting on consumer goodwill won't pay the bills. What's your fail-safe plan?" The question pierced through her confidence like a cold steel blade. Clara took a breath, weighing her response. Should she throw ethics to the wayside in the face of practicalities? Was she willing to negotiate her ideals for economic viability? "I believe," she began, lacing her words with firmness, "that the market is at a tipping point. With our strategy, even if we face initial setbacks, we'll be starting a movement that will ultimately redefine success." The silence that followed felt potent, each member of the board lost in their deliberations. Clara's stomach coiled in tension. While she had held her ground, how would her vision stand against the imperative nature of profit? The path she had set herself upon was going to demand grit and resilience, perhaps more than she had ever imagined. As she continued to advocate for her vision, she felt not just potential, but the flickering warmth of commitment illuminating her purpose. She concluded, "This isn't merely about launching products, it's about creating a legacy." After her final words fell into the spacious room, Tom nodded, a look of intrigue crossing his face again. But as they discussed next steps, Clara felt the weight of Sam's challenge lingering, demanding her attention. Could she navigate these corporate realities while still honoring her principles? The boundaries were blurring, and uncertainty loomed invitingly. Would she risk it all for a fleeting dream, or carve a new path in the corporate world? Clara exited the boardroom filled with a whirlwind of hope and trepidation. Unbeknownst to her, the upcoming challenge would not only test her proposal's viability, but also her very essence as a leader. "Preparation is key," she reminded herself as she walked, her thoughts transforming into a revelation that the clash between dream and reality was only just beginning to take shape. The time had come to define what success truly meant to her. Clara withdrew into her office after the meeting, the atmosphere thick with palpable tension. She placed her hands on the desk, staring blankly at the screen. The excitement she had felt seconds before was now dulled by the sting of Sam's challenge. What if they're right? What if her vision was just an echo of her own ideals, lost in a ruthless market? As she scrolled through her digital notes from the presentation, it became clear that she needed to address Sam's concerns head-on. A half-hearted approach wouldn't suffice, and that notion ignited an urgent fire within her. Clara realized that she needed a solid strategy to present not only the ethical side of her proposal, but a pragmatic operational plan that would preemptively tackle the doubts of skeptics. Over the next few days, Clara immersed herself in research, dissecting case studies of brands that had successfully navigated the waters of ethical consumption while maintaining financial viability. She began networking with professionals in her field, seeking mentors who had faced similar struggles. Each conversation uncovered valuable insights, revealing layers of complexity she hadn't fully appreciated before. With each piece of new information, Clara found fragments of her own potential crystallizing into sharper focus. She started to think of herself not just as a junior manager, but as a catalyst for change, a leader who could unify values and profitability. Fueled by this sense of purpose, she crafted a heightened version of her business proposal that integrated robust market analytics alongside compelling human stories, a combination she now realized was essential. She called another meeting with Tom to discuss her refined strategy. Sitting across from him, the faint hum of fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, she cast aside any lingering trepidation. "I've revisited my proposal with new insights," she began, determined to infuse her confidence into every word. What if we also developed a network of local farmers committed to sustainable practices? It would not only ensure supply but also capture the heart of our marketing message, supporting community. Tom raised an eyebrow, intrigued but cautious. And the logistics of that? Market research suggests it could complicate distribution. Clara leaned forward, fueled by adrenaline. But isn't that precisely why we should embrace this? By investing in a direct relationship with suppliers, we can highlight transparency. It allows us to tell a story about not just the products we sell, but the mission we stand for. Consumers want to know where their food comes from, and the impact of their choices. As they discussed the minutiae of her renewed vision, she noticed Tom's expression shifting from skepticism to interest. This was the breakthrough she had hoped for, a connection point where her ethics didn't clash with practicality, but instead complemented it. However, as she left Tom's office, Clara couldn't shake the nagging thought regarding Sam's continued resistance. He would need to come on board, or the structural integrity of her plan would falter. She recognized this as her moment to confront not just challenges outside, but the internal barriers she had created for herself. That evening, Clara returned home and stood before the mirror. "I am worth this fight," she told her reflection, almost defiantly. Each day she had allowed her doubts to dictate her reality, but that had to end. She would engage Sam, challenge his perspectives, and transform confrontation into collaboration. The next morning, she sent an email, requesting a private meeting with him. She rehearsed lines in her mind, steeling her resolve for a strategic dialogue that would be both assertive and respectful. "The goal isn't just to defend my beliefs," she noted to herself, but to create a partnership. As days turned into nights filled with preparation, Clara sensed an impending climax ahead. Navigating her corporate flight path would involve rigorous negotiations that may shake foundational beliefs held by the board. But self-doubt had been flipped on its head. Her resolve felt fortified by ambition, not only for her career but for the principles that drove her. As Clara put the finishing touches on her notes for the meeting, she felt a tremor of excitement course through her. She was stepping into an unknown yet transformative confrontation that could redefine not only her vision, but also her agency within the organization. And in that moment of clarity, she realized the true challenge lay not just in the market or the boardroom, but in how far she would be willing to push herself to turn her vision into reality. "Now," she whispered to herself, a steely determination in her voice. "The moment of truth has arrived." Clara's heart beat like a drum in her chest as she approached Sam's office. Each step felt heavier, weighed down by the anxiety that had plagued her since his challenge. She smoothed her blouse, inhaled deeply, and reminded herself of the journey that had led her to this pivotal confrontation. She wasn't just defending an idea. She was standing up for a vision that could reshape company values and align them with sustainable practices. She knocked lightly, and Sam's voice called her in. Surrounding her were corporate accolades and reminders of successes that seemed to smirk down at her from the walls. "Clara," he acknowledged, eyes narrowing with mild curiosity. "Thanks for meeting with me," she replied, keeping her tone even as she stood her ground. "I've been reassessing our last discussion, and I'd like to address some of your concerns directly." Sam gestured toward a chair. "Sure, take a seat. I'm all ears." As she settled in, Clara took another steadying breath. "I know you have reservations about my proposal integrating local farmers. I believe that it's essential to creating an authentic narrative around our brand. We need to differentiate ourselves in the marketplace, especially with younger consumers who crave transparency." Sam's expression remained skeptical. "And those relationships can create disruptions. Is it worth the risk?" Clara leaned forward, her voice steady with conviction. "Those risks are manageable. We can conduct phased pilot programs that align with our current distribution methods. By doing this, we're not only investing in quality, but also in community welfare, which is becoming a crucial criterion for consumer choice. It's the kind of shift that could elevate our brand and profitability in the long run." For a moment, silence split the tension in the room. Clara watched as Sam considered her words. She could almost see the gears turning in his mind, dissecting her proposed solution. It felt exhilarating and terrifying all at once. I understand your point, but it's still a significant departure. We've built this business on a layer of stability, and you're suggesting we take risks that could disrupt that. Innovation requires a leap, Clara responded, her voice unwavering. Have we forgotten the struggles that established our stability? Isn't that the very journey that can give credence to our new story? Profitability and values can coexist. Sam's gaze shifted from her to the window, where city traffic drifted by absent-mindedly. She sensed his agitation, the buzz of the outside world juxtaposed against their charged conversation. Look, I appreciate your passion, Clara, but we play in a cutthroat market. If I greenlight this, it's on me, financially and reputationally. What if you don't pull it off? The doubt echoed in his tone, but beneath it, Clara detected a flicker of consideration. She seized the opportunity, her instincts honing in on his vulnerability. What if I fail? She echoed, leaning back to regard him. Then we reassess. But if we don't try, we risk stagnation, a fate worse than failing with purpose. We could redefine what it means to be a responsible brand. Consumers are already moving. It's time we do too. Sam remained silent, but the flicker of uncertainty in his eyes suggested that he was wrestling with the weight of her words. For the first time, Clara felt a surge of hope. Had she reached him? Yet, she knew that one meeting might not shift the dynamics overnight. The atmosphere was charged, each second embedding the importance of this moment deeply in her spine. She could sense her own fears teetering on the edge of possibility. Let me conduct a focused test launch, present the resulting data, and we'll evaluate its performance together. If it fails, I'll take responsibility. If it succeeds, it could open a new paradigm for our business. Her voice rang with resolve, the request both bold and terrifying. Sam finally turned to face her fully. You're asking for a lot of trust. I can't just give it away. Clara looked him squarely in the eye. Then let's build it together. All I need is your support for this initial step. As Sam mulled over her proposition, Clara felt the air shift. She was no longer merely a junior manager, stumbling through corporate labyrinths. She was laying down a challenge, uncovering a new side of her that demanded respect and partnership. But as he shifted in his chair, the moment was about to pivot again. Would he rise to the challenge, or would he reaffirm the barriers she had fought so hard to dismantle? The tension hung like a taut string, ready to snap. And in that charged silence, Clara knew this confrontation was only the beginning of a greater fight, not just with her colleagues, but with the weight of her own beliefs. The stakes were growing higher, and so was the urgency to prove herself in a battle that felt both personal and professional. Is this what you really want to do, Clara? He finally asked. Her answer could change everything. Clara's heart raced as she processed Sam's question, its implications swirling around her mind like a vortex. She had come prepared with facts, strategies, and a profound belief in the need for change. Yet here she was, confronted with the essence of her desire. Was this truly what she wanted? Was she ready to bear the burden of a weighty ambition? Yes, she asserted, her voice steady despite the quiver of uncertainty at its edges. I want to lead this initiative. I want to be part of a transformation that aligns our ideals with our operations. Each word was like a stepping stone, deliberate and resolute. Sam considered her. Clara could practically see the calculations forming behind his eyes, weighing risk against potential yield. The silence stretched, punctuated only by the faint hum of the office's fluorescent lights. She felt vulnerable yet empowered, standing on the precipice of an uncharted future. What's your timeline? He finally asked, his tone shifting slightly from guarded to intrigued. The question jolted her back to the moment. I propose a 3-month pilot. This will allow us to gather data while minimizing disruption. We can identify local partners who align with our values and establish metrics to evaluate our success. Sam nodded slowly. his brow furrowing deeper in contemplation. Clara caught herself holding her breath, each passing second amplifying the anxiety coursing through her. "And if it falters?" he challenged. "What's your contingency plan?" Clara paused to gather her thoughts. "I would suggest having alternative suppliers on standby to ensure our core operations remain unaffected. However, I believe that if we approach this with a strong commitment and transparency, we can mitigate risks together." His expression softened, but the caution remained. "People don't easily relinquish power, Clara. You're seeking to upend an entire operational framework." Her stomach clenched at the truth of his statement. The enormity of change loomed before her like a giant wave ready to crash down. Yet she had to push through. "I refuse to see it as an upheaval. It's an evolution, a necessary adaptation to a world that's changing faster than we can comprehend. If anything, history shows us that stagnation is far riskier." "You speak with conviction," Sam remarked, a hint of admiration creeping into his voice. Clara took that as encouragement. "It's about more than just profits. It's about paving a path that aligns with modern consumer ethics. I want this company to be at the forefront, not trailing behind as an afterthought." The internal debates raged in Sam, and she could sense the clash of his desire for stability against Clara's vision for innovation. With each heartbeat, she felt the stakes escalate, not just for her career, but for the very essence of the company and her involvement within it. "You've got passion, Clara, but accountability is paramount," Sam finally said, breaking the spell of uncertainty with a firm finality. "If I approve this, you accept full responsibility, yes?" "Yes," Clara replied, her voice a blend of assertiveness and reverence for the weight he was placing on her shoulders. "I'll execute the plan, oversee the partnerships, and ensure that the data is gathered diligently to demonstrate our progress." She could feel a shift in the air, a fragile crack forming in the barriers that had once defined her role within this corporate structure. The notion that he might actually approve her plan felt surreal, yet exhilarating. "All right," Sam said, a hint of a smile breaking across his otherwise austere demeanor. "We'll give it a shot, but know this. There will be no second chances. Make this work." Clara's heart surged with a rush of momentum. "Thank you, Sam. I won't let you down." As she left his office, clarity enveloped her. This was more than a professional venture. It was a battleground of personal conviction. Stepping into this role meant redefining not just her professional identity, but confronting the very biases that had held her back. With each stride through the office halls, something transformative sparked within her. She was no longer just an implementer of someone else's ideas. She had become an architect of change. Yet with the exhilaration came the looming weight of expectation and the fear of failure. Clara paused at her desk, glancing at the files that had once felt insurmountable. The path ahead was fraught with uncertainty, and she had so much to prove. But those doubts were overshadowed by a burgeoning determination. This was her time to shine, to embrace the challenge ahead. As she began to draft a detailed plan for the pilot, a fresh question surfaced in her mind. What more was she capable of beyond this endeavor? And for the first time, Clara ventured into the space where her greatest fears could either shackle her or set her free. Would this leap of faith illuminate her hidden strengths, or would it expose more than she was prepared to confront? Clara stood in the center of her kitchen, now transformed from a chaotic battleground of uncertainty into a vibrant workshop of possibilities. The bright daylight flooded in through the window, illuminating the array of fresh produce from her trusted local farmers, each ingredient pulsating with life and promise. The noise of the bubbling pots and whirring appliances harmonized with the laughter of her son Jake, a sound she had fought to protect. As the pilot program for her baby food line began rolling out, Clara felt an overwhelming sense of purpose flood her veins. The launch was not merely about marketing organic baby food. It was a clarion call for ethical practices, a beacon promoting the stories of the farmers who nurtured the land. Today marked the beginning of that revolution. In the weeks that followed, Clara worked tirelessly. She organized workshops where customers could meet local farmers, share their stories, and understand the essence of the ingredients in front of them. The community embraced her vision, and the pilot program began gaining traction far beyond her expectations. Engaging with customers in person deepened her connection to them and reassured her commitment to authenticity. Clara witnessed tangible growth in both sales and community interest. Encouraged by this newfound momentum, she gathered data with meticulous precision, showing a significant rise in customer loyalty and engagement. Each interaction reinforced her belief that transparency and ethics could coexist in a corporate model, paving the way for unparalleled success. "Clara, this is remarkable," Tom exclaimed one afternoon as they reviewed the latest figures. His professional demeanor lacked the skepticism that had once clouded their meetings. "You've practically turned skepticism into support. This success is undeniable." Clara smiled, disarmed by his newfound enthusiasm. "It's not just about sales. It's about creating a culture that connects local production with consumer choice. We're on the brink of something transformative here, Tom." As she meticulously laid out her strategy for the presentation to the board, Clara reflected on her journey. The fears that once paralyzed her had now become the fuel propelling her forward. She had transformed her doubts into a commitment to be the voice for her community, to advocate for a business grounded in ethical practice. Finally, the day arrived for Clara to present the pilot program outcomes to the board. As she stepped into the boardroom, her heart raced, but this time it thudded with an electric energy born from confidence. Presenting the data felt like sharing a celebration, a collective triumph of every farmer and every conscious consumer who believed in her vision. The board listened intently as she detailed the pilot's successes, showcasing consumer engagement metrics, profit margins, and the local partnerships that had grown into a robust network of support. She demonstrated exactly how their collective efforts forged an innovative path for ethical consumption that aligned with broader corporate values. When Sam spoke, his tone was different. "You've crafted a compelling case, Clara. This pilot demonstrates not just profit, but resonance with modern values. We need to embrace this shift, wholeheartedly." With every word, Clara felt her heart swell. This was validation not only for her ideas, but for her entire journey. She had carved a niche that blended ambition with integrity, emerging as a leader who could inspire others. As the meeting concluded, Clara was met with applause. The sincerity of the board's appreciation washed over her, grounding her in the reality of her hard-won achievements. She had proven herself, achieving recognition not only as a competent professional, but as a visionary leader whose aspirations echoed the needs of her community. Walking out of the boardroom, Clara felt different, whole, complete. She had taken risks, challenged norms, and transformed her vision into action. This was more than professional success. It was personal fulfillment woven through every outcome. The journey she had embarked on had reshaped her identity, from a chef in a diner to a champion of ethical reform in the food industry. Feeling kelp with a renewed sense of purpose, Clara headed home. She couldn't wait to share the news with Jake, who had been her motivation throughout this journey. The sacrifices and late nights had been worth it, and as she looked forward to the future, she realized there was no limit to what she could achieve next. Clara had not only survived the corporate world, she had conquered it, establishing her place as a pioneer, an advocate, and a mother, with a legacy that would inspire her son for generations to come. The battle she had fought was not the end, but merely the beginning of a much grander adventure. And so, she turned her gaze toward the horizon, ready to embrace whatever new challenges awaited, armed with the undeniable conviction that she was capable of forging change. Now, audience, this is the moment to show your support. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and support content that inspires change. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending below, because your thoughts matter. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.